If you had told me 3 months ago that going on a 90-day dating detox would change my perspective on love more than any relationship ever had, I would have laughed. I probably would have made some sarcastic joke about joining a monastery or asked if I was expected to burn all my scented candles in mourning. But here I am, 90 days later, telling you exactly that. This intentional pause from dating taught me more about love than any partner ever has. Not because love itself changed, but because I finally stopped to understand what it really means. In the beginning, I thought I was taking a break to reset. You know, like turning your phone off and on again when it's lagging. My dating life felt like an endless loop of mismatched expectations, emotional misfires, and the nagging sense that I was chasing something I couldn't even define. I kept trying to fix things by swiping more, going on more dates, making myself more available. But the more I leaned in, the more disconnected I felt. So I stopped. No dates, no flirting, no texting someone just because I was bored. I committed to 3 months of zero romantic entanglements. It felt drastic at first, like giving up caffeine when you've been drinking 5 cups a day. The withdrawal was real. I didn't realize how much of my energy, attention, and even identity had been wrapped up in dating. The first few weeks were the hardest. Not because I missed anyone in particular, but because I missed the possibility. I missed the thrill of a notification, the little dopamine hit of attention, the illusion that something exciting might be right around the corner. It wasn't loneliness that hit me. It was the loss of distraction. I had to sit with my own thoughts, with no one to impress, no one to chase, and nowhere to place the blame but myself. Without dating to preoccupy me, I started noticing things I'd long ignored. Patterns. The way I'd morph myself slightly depending on who I was interested in. The way I'd compromise without realizing it, not on big things, but on small details that chipped away at my authenticity. I realized that in trying so hard to be lovable, I'd forgotten to love myself in the most basic, essential ways. Not in the self-care spa day way, but in the deeper way. The kind that says, I know you, and I still choose you. One of the most surprising things I learned was how much dating had become a way to avoid myself. As long as I was chasing someone else's attention, I didn't have to pay attention to the parts of me that felt empty, confused, or unworthy. I could project all my hopes and fears onto someone else, pinning my happiness on a connection that hadn't even been earned yet. It was easier to invest in the fantasy of a person than to invest in the reality of myself. During this 90-day pause, I had time to reflect on the way I define love. I used to think love was about finding someone who made life more exciting, someone who made my heart race and my days more interesting. But that was infatuation. That was the chemical cocktail of lust and novelty. Real love, I've come to realize, isn't about addition. It's about amplification. It doesn't complete you. It reflects you. It doesn't rescue you. It respects you. I started writing again. Not love letters, not texts, but journals. Pages and pages of thoughts, fears, dreams, and memories. I began to understand my emotional triggers, not just what upset me, but why. I revisited past relationships with a new lens, seeing not just what went wrong, but what I'd been trying to learn through them. I stopped labeling my exes as toxic or angelic. I began to see them as mirrors, each one reflecting something I hadn't yet seen in myself. I also learned that love doesn't always need a romantic partner to exist. There's love in solitude, love in friendships, love in showing up for yourself day after day. There's love in choosing boundaries, love in saying no, love in taking a walk alone and feeling at peace instead of restless. I began to see love as a way of being rather than a goal to achieve. As the days went by, I noticed my standards shifting, not just for others, but for myself. I started asking questions I never had the courage to ask before. Do I even like this version of myself? Would I date me? Not in a superficial sense, but emotionally. Would I feel safe with me? Supported? Understood? That was a humbling question to answer. Sometimes the answer was no. But instead of spiraling, I used that as a guide. I started doing the things I'd want a partner to do for me. Listening, being patient, showing up even when I didn't feel like it. There's a joke that goes, I took a break from dating and discovered I'm the toxic one. Okay, it's a joke, but also, it's not. Self-awareness is brutal sometimes. I realized I'd been walking around with my own set of red flags and calling them survival mechanisms. It was uncomfortable to face that truth, but it was also freeing. Because once you own your patterns, you can change them. And change, I found, is a profound act of love. The detox also showed me how much of love is timing. And not just in the sense of meeting the right person at the right moment, but in meeting yourself at the right moment. How can you love someone well if you're constantly abandoning yourself? How can you commit to someone else if you haven't committed to understanding yourself? I realized that many of my past relationships were built on a shaky foundation of unspoken needs and unhealed wounds. We were looking to each other to fill gaps we didn't even have the language to describe. And when the inevitable cracks began to show, we called it incompatibility instead of what it really was. Two people asking for love in ways they didn't even understand. So, if you're thinking of taking a break from dating, I say do it. Not to prove a point, not to punish yourself, and definitely not as a game, but as an act of clarity, as a way to come home to yourself. Because the most beautiful thing I learned about love from 90 days of no dating is this. Sometimes, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you build with yourself when no one else is watching.